2006 in the war of aggression on Lebanon, tried to destroy, to demolish most of Dahiya al-Janubiyya, the southern suburb of Beirut, in order to punish the population because they cannot win the war against Hezbollah. So the best way, tactically, from a military perspective, was to destroy so much infrastructure, make the suffering so tremendous that the people will do the bidding for the Israeli army and stop the resistance themselves because the price is too high. They moved this from an applied kind of doctrine to a real academic doctrine developed at Tel Aviv University at workshops between the army and academics at Tel Aviv University, and they called it the Dahiya doctrine. It's the doctrine of disproportionate force. You don't go and fight the resistance forces because you cannot win. You destroy infrastructure and you destroy civilian livelihoods. You make their lives so miserable that they cannot continue living, and then they pressure the resistance. This is the doctrine. That's one aspect of complicity of Tel Aviv University. Other than the 55 other projects ongoing at Tel Aviv with the Ministry of Defense to develop weapons of all sorts. They've turned Gaza into a field, a test field for Israeli weapons that they sell on the world market. And just a quick quote, because some people say, well, some universities in Britain are guilty of that as well. I mean, they're complicit with the Department of Defense, Iraq, Afghanistan, and so on. So is MIT and some other American universities. Why is Israel a different case? Well, let's see what the Israelis are saying about this. Tel Aviv University professor Abraham Katsir, a very prominent figure, and many of these figures are in the academy and the military at the same time. They're consultants for the army, and at the same time they're academics. They always have this double job. He says, one of the things which helps the state of Israel is the fact that each one of us, referring to the academics, is both an Israeli citizen and working in these military fields. I'm an academic at university, and I've also done my military service. And I was also at state arms manufacturer Rafael for some years. All of those things come together. We're helping one another. Something which doesn't happen elsewhere. I've been in the US and Europe, and there's a disconnect between the workshops and the army. They hate the army in the West. With us, I think that we succeed by virtue of the fact that we help one another so much. And I'll keep it at that. Many other examples. Hebrew University is not just complicit in occupation, it is a colonizing university. One of the two campuses of Hebrew University is built on occupied East Jerusalem, occupied Palestinian land. It itself is violating the Fourth Geneva Convention. It is not simply complicit in Israeli state violations. It itself is committing war crimes. So I'll keep it at that. I'll end with a quote from Edward Said about the role of the intellectuals in this type of situation. Edward Said says, quote, nothing in my mind is more reprehensible than those habits of mind in the intellectual that induce avoidance. That characteristic, turning away from a difficult and principled position which you know to be the right one, but which you decide not to take. You do not want to appear too political. You want to keep a reputation for being balanced, objective, moderate. Your hope is to remain within the responsible mainstream. For an intellectual, these habits of mind are corrupting par excellence. Personally, he says, I have encountered them in one of the toughest of all contemporary issues, Palestine, where fear of speaking out about one of the greatest injustices in modern history has hobbled, blinkered, muzzled many who know the truth and are in a position to serve it. For despite the abuse and vilification that any outspoken supporter of Palestinian rights and self-determination earns for him or herself, the truth deserves to be spoken, represented by an unafraid and compassionate intellectual. End of quote. Precisely, the truth needs to be spoken and acted upon. Thus, BDS. Our South Africa moment has arrived. Thank you.